My name is Jana Kryline. Most of the people in the wine world know me by my social media alias, which is The Wine Girl. I am the head of content for Club dVIN, and I am also a founding member. Club dVIN is the world's premier NFT wine club. And tonight I'm joined by one of our founders and visionary, David Garrett. And we're going to be talking about wine allocation and NFTs. But before we get into it, Dave, why don't you introduce yourself properly?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dave Garrett. I've been in the wine business for about 20 years. I was a tech guy, sold my company when I was like 28 and went to Argentina and started a vineyard there and a winery called the Vines of Mendoza. I was a co-founder there, was there for about 10 years. And more recently, I've started a project here in Spain. In the Priorat, we bought a distressed property here that we've been nursing back to health. In my spare time, I'm the executive producer of a new television show with Carmelo Anthony that we're shooting this summer, profiling upcoming winemakers, and then another couple of documentaries as well. So, doing a bunch of stuff, mostly in wine, and then I'm one of the co-founders of Club dVIN.
Okay, so busy guy. No big deal. So I'll give you guys a little bit of background on what Club dVIN is. Dave can go into it in a lot more detail, but since the topic tonight is allocation NFTs, we will, oh, hey, Brian.
Hello there.
Hi, this is Brian, another one of our co-founders sitting in Manhattan, you can tell. So Brian, I was about to do a little intro about what Club dVIN is, but how about you introduce yourself first so we all know who you are?
Oh, crypto curious, wine curious, just curious like a cat in general. Loving what I'm doing now with Club dVIN. I come from a background of venture capital and private equity and a little bit of Wall Street here and there. And got involved with Club dVIN about a year ago and have been fascinated by the developments in the crypto world. NFTs. I think every 2 months it's a different story and it's just more exciting. So I wake up every morning just looking for what new adventure the day brings. Today not so much given the markets, but these too shall turn around. So I'm not worried about it. Long enough in the tooth to have seen a couple of these cycles happen, but I'm loving the wine. Jana has taught me so much about, what I should like and what I shouldn't like. Hopefully not said inappropriately, but like every other woman in my life, telling me, what is the correct thing to think and do. So
Nope.
David's shaking his head.
Nope.
So anyway, nice to see everybody.
Nice to see you. Brian and I, we did an event in Austin last week, and that was awesome. I'm going to see you next week in New York, Brian. Very much looking forward to it. Okay, so jumping into Club dVIN. Club dVIN is a first and foremost, it's a wine club. Okay, we're focused on curating high-end wine and gastronomy experiences for our members and also providing them with unrivaled offers on investment grade wine sourced directly from the producer or from pristine cellars like Robert Parker's personal collection, for example. We use blockchain technology as an enabler to help seal trust into the purchasing process of investment grade wine, and also to elevate the way we experience and share wine. You don't have to know anything about blockchain or NFTs to be a member or to enjoy the benefits of Club dVIN. But we're trying to revolutionize the way we experience wine. So tonight's topic, wine allocation and NFTs. Dave, I'm going to shoot this one your way. How do wine allocations usually work, and where do NFTs come into the equation?
Oh, okay, that's a long one. So look, allocations work different ways in different places. But an allocation, just like to define an allocation really simply, it's when wine is one of those things where, especially if you're making great wine, it's a relatively limited resource. You have a very small vineyard that produces a very limited amount of wine, even especially in the old world, but even in some of the wine regions in the new world where they're making investment grade or collectible wines. Those wines are typically in very, very small vineyards. They're very small production, and there's a lot of demand. Lots of people want those wines. So the typical way that you would go about getting those wines is that you would get an allocation. So in the States, where most of your kind of investment grade or collectible level wines are sold direct to consumer. So you're talking about Sine Qua Non or 100 Acre or Harlan or Bond or Screaming Eagle or Colgan or wines that are like that, right? So those wines, because they make so little of it and because so many people want those wines, they're what's called highly allocated, meaning that you sign up on their waiting list, and then you usually wait for a couple of years on the waiting list until you get on the mailing list. And then once you're on the mailing list for a couple of years and somebody drops off, then maybe they let you buy one bottle, and that's an allocation. You have a 1 bottle allocation with that winery. And sometimes that'll grow and you'll get an allocation of 6 bottles, or you get an allocation of a case. And that allocation is usually something that you earn through waiting for it. And that happens both in the new world, like in California, or in the old world. Mostly you'd see that kind of in Burgundy or even in Champagne, where you'll have a relationship with the winemaker and you'll have a special allocation. Most of the time in the old world in Europe, that allocation goes to a negociant, or goes to instead of going to a particular individual, it's going to a distributor of some sort or a middleman. But it still works the same way, right? You have an allocation. I get a certain number of bottles that come to me every year. Now, in the wine world, at least for the past, couple hundred years that allocations have been around, that's not really a contract. It's more like an agreement. It's a social agreement. It's a social pact that you have with that winemaker. You say you've waited on the list. You have an allocation of however many bottles, and the winemaker honors that allocation. And then if at some point you decide that you don't want that allocation anymore, you say that you don't want it anymore, and then the winemaker will go to the next person on the list and offer your allocation to the next person on the list who's been waiting for 5 years. So that's how an allocation typically works in the wine world. It's for wines that have a very, very limited production and lots of demand. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, in short, it gets you behind the red velvet rope very quickly.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, so before we try and figure out the connection between an NFT and a wine allocation, can one of you just briefly describe what an NFT actually is, in case anybody doesn't know that's listening?
Yeah, I'll take it. I think everybody on the call has probably heard the term or knows in great detail what it is. But it's an electronic contract that can be attached to a real world asset. In this instance, to a bottle of wine. And in our case, the NFT or the digital cork is not trading on its own. It is literally married to the bottle of wine, and as the bottle of wine is sold, the NFT moves along with it. And you've got a great deal of information about the bottle of wine, where it's been, where it came from. If it's been bought and sold a couple of times, you'll know who did that, whether it's been held in a bonded warehouse. So the NFT is quite valuable from that perspective.
Okay, so it's basically the virtual twin to the physical asset, right? It proves provenance. It's basically like a digital deed.
That is it.
So that's one kind of NFT that we do at Club dVIN. We call that the digital cork. We have other kinds of NFTs. The tasting token NFT is another kind of NFT that we offer, which is an NFT that is a proof of experience. So some of you may have read about there's There's a bunch of articles being written recently. The founder of Ethereum has been talking about soul-bound tokens, which is like an NFT that that might be your birth certificate, or might be your high school diploma, right? Yeah. So it's an NFT that it's a digital asset. It can go around with you, but it's not really something that not only is it something that you wouldn't want to sell, but it's something you wouldn't want to be able to sell, right? You wouldn't want to be able to facilitate identity theft with NFTs. So our tasting tokens work in the same way, right? It's an authentic proof of experience. You're not allowed to sell them. They're non-transferable, non-tradable NFTs that are just a digital asset. And then obviously, the third kind of NFT that we offer at Club dVIN is our membership NFT, right? So that, again, purely digital asset, has no connection to a real world item, but that NFT provides all of the holder of that NFT, all of the benefits of being a member of Club dVIN, and we can talk about what those benefits are a little bit later. But that's not really what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today, I think, is the fourth kind of NFT that we offer, which is an allocation token. Does that answer everybody's question? And by the way, are we taking questions from the peanut gallery with this?
We've got actually a lot of comments in here. And also I see that Fran is here. Fran, we met in London from the Gerard Basset Foundation. Hi, Fran. And yeah, let me see. I'll take a look at questions, but let's go ahead now with, hi. Let's go ahead and explain the allocation NFT then. Do we have any, are we doing allocation NFTs as Club dVIN already, Dave?
We are. So we have a couple of different projects that we're working on. One of them we're actually announcing very soon. I can talk about it a little bit. I'll talk about it a little bit later. But let me first kind of talk about what an allocation token is. So let's go back to what a normal allocation is in the wine world, right? So an allocation is, you're a winery, or you're a winemaker, you make a small production of a fantastic collectible wine. You have many, many more people that want to buy that bottle than you have bottles available. So you start an allocation. And that allocation is, sometimes it's kind of like a wine club, right? A wine club, to a certain extent, in some cases, works like an allocation. You have a certain number of bottles that are promised to you every year or every vintage by the winemaker. And that allocation can be increased or decreased depending on, sometimes the whim of the winemaker. So what does that have to do with NFTs? Well, we've been working and talking to a lot of winemakers from all over the world about ways that we can use the blockchain to help them with their business. And one of the things we thought of was, what if an NFT could serve as, instead of you just being promised a certain number of bottles by the winemaker every year, what if an NFT served as a digital contract, a contract with the winemaker that says, all right, according to this contract, I get X number of bottles from this particular label every year from the winemaker. I have the obligation, or not the obligation, I have the right to buy this many bottles from every vintage, right? So that allocation, instead of being kind of a loose social contract or a promise from a winemaker, ends up being a real contract that can be enforced. Well, that does a couple of things, right? It turns it from being like a promise into an asset. And that asset can really be something that helps both the winemaker and the consumer, right? So one example that we've been thinking about is a winemaker that might want to start a new brand, right? You've got a great winemaker, wants to start a new brand, finds a fantastic little vineyard someplace, has a great vision for it, wants to start a new brand, and knows that they'll only have 500 cases of that particular wine available every year because it's 10 acres someplace in Bordeaux or Burgundy or Napa. Well, the winemaker can say, all right, well, instead of just making an email list for these allocations, I'm going to sell an allocation token. So the people that want to buy this wine in the future can purchase a token that says, all right, this is a contract that says I have the right to buy 6 bottles a year, every year that this wine is being made. So we've kind of talked about some of the numbers on this, but let's say that the winemaker, if they can make 500 cases a year, they can sell 1,000 allocation tokens for 6 bottles each. So that for the winemaker, they get to sell those 1,000 tokens. They find their 1,000, best customers or their 1,000 biggest fans, and let's say they sell those allocation tokens for let's just be let's use round numbers and say they sell them for $100 each, right? So that's $100,000 that the winemaker gets to be able to use as capital to build their brand. So the consumer gets that right. They're purchasing an asset that gives them the right to buy those bottles every year. And the winemaker gets some funding to create the brand, to, maybe to buy the grapes or to design the labels or to buy the bottles or whatever it is they're going to do to make the wine. So it's good for the winemaker and it's good for the consumer. Over time, what happens is, if that wine becomes more and more desirable, let's say the winemaker is now hugely incentivized to make that wine fantastic and more desirable in the marketplace, well, then those allocation tokens would be more and more valuable on the open market. So think about it kind of like sine qua non, right? If you had, or 100 acre, let's say you had a 6-bottle allocation for sine qua non. You've been, on their mailing list for 25 years, and you finally got your way up to a 6-bottle allocation. Well, if that was a contract, that was an NFT and that was a contract, what would that be worth in the market? I'll tell you, it would be worth about, somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. So, imagine you buying that allocation token for $100 in the first vintage to support your favorite winemaker. But over time, as that wine becomes more famous or the wine becomes more desirable, then that allocation token becomes an asset for each of the consumers.
Right.
So it really becomes, instead of it just being a strictly commercial relationship, it almost becomes kind of like a partnership between the consumer, the wine lover, and the winemaker, and everybody has potential benefits built in. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Makes total sense. And I just want to pile on regarding the utility of an NFT in tracking wine or establishing provenance. As David was saying, yeah, you can get your allocation, but the vineyards today often can't track where the wine is going. These are investment grade, bottles of wine. If the initial purchaser sells it to somebody else and they sell it to somebody else, the NFT allows you to track that wine all the way through to whoever drinks it, grape to glass. And eventually who drinks the wine. The NFT gives us the utility to be able to then go back to the wine, to the vineyard or the industry as a whole and say, hey, here's who's drinking this kind of wine. That's incredibly valuable information, for the vineyards to have, and for our club members to have as well. So the NFT operates on many different levels.
Right. So that's actually more a tasting token benefit, right? So that's we'll get into maybe more detail about the 3 NFTs. Now the 4th NFT is the allocation NFT, but tasting token is that proof of experience NFT that Dave was talking about. And basically for the first time ever, what Brian is saying is, for the first time ever, the wine producer actually is able to communicate with the end consumer at the point of consumption, which is extremely interesting and valuable, and is never been done before. As well as having additional opportunities, which could be royalties. And there's several different aspects of the tasting token that are really exciting. And that is one of the NFTs. So yeah.
You know, one of the things that that I actually kind of left out of this is the allocation token can have some interesting utility as well, right? Like, if you own an allocation token to a particular brand or a particular label that a winemaker makes, maybe, and I talked about this, I think I saw that Dan Petrosky's here, maybe we can pull him up on stage, but we talked about, you know, Dan does these fantastic pickup parties for Massican. And we said, well, what if you could say, look, that allocation token gives you the ability to be able to, it's like your ticket to be able to come to the pickup party where you're watching, you know, a Fellini movie at a drive-in theater, or, you know, whatever the amazing thing that Dan has planned for his next pickup party. But you know, if you can, if that allocation token can also provide utility, it really does help to build community, right? Like, all the people that have that allocation token are kind of part of a little club. And you know, the winemaker can provide lots of interesting utility to the holders of that allocation token. The other interesting piece is that because it's the blockchain, and because it's, you know, transparent and public, all of the people that own allocation tokens could, you know, they could even form their own group, right? They could get together, they could create community among themselves, and, you know, have meetups for people that are just giant fans of Massican, and watch the Fellini movies on their own. But there's just all kinds of really interesting things that you can do that don't exist today, but could be, but just open up really a lot of kind of exciting and interesting possibilities around both, you know, having your allocation be an asset, around community and connection, and certainly around utility, offering incentives and rewards to people that are part of your allocation group.
Right on. So who would allocation tokens actually be available to? Do you have to be a member of Club dVIN to get a Club dVIN allocation token, or is this something that you can just?
So look, we're starting with a few different, a select group of different winemakers that we're talking to. Some of them we can announce, and some of them we can't. But we're talking to a bunch of people about doing allocation tokens on the platform. Now, for some people, they're going to want to offer allocation tokens to their existing community, right? Their existing list, their existing the people that are already part of their world. Some of them are going to want to offer allocation tokens only to Club dVIN members, and in some cases, most of the time, the deals that we're putting together are providing, you know, our members with sort of a priority, right? Like, maybe we get a certain allocation of allocation tokens that we can offer to our members, so that we can at least make sure that we have some of them that we can distribute inside of our club. So one great example is, and you know, this is, I can trust everyone here to not spread the news about this, but we're going to announce on Thursday that we're working with Carmelo Anthony and his the very first wine that he's making available from Chateauneuf de Pape, and we're working with him on an allocation token for a very, very, very small amount of wine that'll be available. He's just made a unbelievably fantastic wine from Chateauneuf. We're doing a very small event and announcing that on Thursday. So you'll be reading more about that in the future.
All right, awesome. So Dan Petrosky, just because I know Dave made a couple little insiders there. Dan Petrosky's here watching. He's also a founding member and a Californian winemaker. And Dan's real into the NFT scene, so he's a pro. I don't know if you can you pull people up on stage, Dave? I don't know how to do that.
Well, we should ask him
On the
first.
spot,
Like
man.
maybe he's busy. Maybe he's having lunch.
Maybe he's making wine.
Poor guy.
All right, cool. So, okay. So how long would an allocation token be valid for? Did we talk about this is a lifetime asset then, like the dVIN membership?
So look, it's a contract like anything else, which means that you can sort of figure it out. I mean, I think that for the most part, the allocation tokens that we've been talking about are a contract that gives you the right to buy a certain number of bottles from every vintage every year. Now there are caveats, right? Some of the caveats are that if you sometimes there's bad vintages where you just don't get enough wine, right? And maybe in a normal case you would be able to give 1,000 people 6 bottles allocations, but if you've got a terrible year, or you've got a, heaven forbid, a fire or something terrible, then you wouldn't be able to maybe you wouldn't be able to give everybody their full allocation, and you'd have to, as part of the contract, it would be, everyone would get a pro rata share. There are certainly some times when, for example, what we're doing with Carmelo is he's not going to make wine every year. He's going to make wine when he thinks that it's a great vintage. So the allocation token for Carmelo will be in years that are great. So he's not guaranteeing that there will be a wine every year. And we've also had other conversations with winemakers who are interested in having a limited time put on the allocation token. So like it's an allocation for 10 years, and then they kind of want to renew it and bring in fresh blood and like do a new version of it. So, but in all of those cases, as long as the terms of the allocation token are public, and as long as everything is transparent, then the person who's buying it, then the market will decide what is the value of that token. So for example, if you've got a 10-year allocation token that's going to expire after 10 years, it's probably going to decrease in value over time rather than increase in value. Whereas if you've got a lifetime allocation token and they're starting to, those bottles are starting to pop up on auction sites for 5 times what you're paying for them from the winemaker, then those allocation tokens are going to increase in value. So all of it, as long as it's transparent, and as long as it's as long as the terms of the deal are transparent, then you can really do a wide variety of things with an allocation token.
It's funny because we're talking about wine, and the types of investments and passions involved here. I'm as you're saying that, David, I'm thinking intergenerational allocation tokens. Not just lifetime. Why not have it be forever?
Well, look, that's what we say for sine qua non, right? When you sign up, if you were to sign up today, if you're my age and you sign up for an allocation sine qua non today, you're probably not getting an allocation for 6, 8, maybe 10 years. And then when you get that allocation, you're not going to want to drink that wine for another 15 years. So if you sign up today for an allocation sine qua non, that's for wine that's going to be consumed in 25 years. So you're buying it for your kids. When you sign up, you're signing up for your children. You're not signing up for yourself. And that's true for a lot of allocations. So yeah, I think that's for sure. It's when you say when I say lifetime, I don't mean like my lifetime. I mean like forever. Like those contracts are forever, which is kind of an interesting new. It's one of the things that is, I don't think talked about quite enough with NFTs, is that they really are forever.
Boy, now
you're
making me think about
for 15 years. He's just put in here. Man.
That's great.
Now you're making me think about
NFTs.
Now you're making me think about, futures contracts versus, trading future wine allocations for current wine allocations. It boggles the mind.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back real quick and answer your question, Ken. So yes, I think allocation tokens can be valuable not just for consumers, but also all the way through the supply chain. And those are the conversations that we're having mostly with winemakers in Burgundy and Bordeaux and Champagne. I think there's a really good opportunity for those wineries to start turning those allocations into not only working capital for themselves, but assets for the whole way through the supply chain. So I think that's a really good idea. I mean, look, a lot of people when we talk about what we're doing, a lot of people think that our goal in life is to make every bottle of wine sold direct to consumer. And let me just say that nothing could be further from the truth. I think that lots of people in the supply chain provide tons and tons of value. Lots of my best friends play a role in one way or another as middlemen in the supply chain. So I think that there's lots of value to be had, and almost every winemaker that I know, places a lot of value on their partners throughout the supply chain. So I think that what NFTs can do is provide visibility and transparency, obviously authenticity, but also tons of utility all the way through the supply chain. So I think that it's not just about direct to consumer.
We've also got a question from Nicole. What regions and types of wine are you purchasing and allocating to primarily?
So, it's typically going to be the and Jana, you can probably answer this question better than me. But it's your allocated wines, your collectible or investment grade wines come from really, 8 or 10 regions, right? They're coming from, Bordeaux, Burgundy, Champagne, the Rhone. They're coming from, in Spain, Ribera, a few in Rioja and the Priorat. They're coming from Tuscany and Piemonte. They're coming from Napa and Sonoma. And then there are a few other regions. I think there are some really great collectible wines in the Mosel. There are some great collectible wines in coming out of Portugal. There's Tokai. There are quite a few Tokai brands that are incredibly hard to find and very collectible. So I think it's probably those regions more than any others, but there's a few more. I mean, there are a couple of wines from the Middle East that are highly collectible, very, very hard to find. There are wines from Australia, Penfolds, and a couple other producers in Australia, smaller producers in the Mornington Peninsula that their wines are considered collectible, investment grade. A few in South Africa, yeah, for sure, and a few in New Zealand. So I don't think that we're limited just to France. Obviously, it's something, if you look at Sotheby's or Christie's, they'll tell you that something like 75% of the volume and value of collectible and investment grade wines that cross their platform come from regions inside of France. So it's a big percentage. 75%, it's a lot, but actually that percentage has been decreasing over time, not increasing. You're starting to see some new stars pop up in some expected places and in some unexpected places. So I think that climate change is helping. Not helping. Sorry, that was a bad turn of phrase. Climate change is creating some opportunities for other regions. But yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I would say, Dave, if you can do a quick run through then, just to summarize each of the NFTs within Club dVIN so that it's clear, just because we've been jumping around a little.
So yeah, so let's start with the allocation token. So the allocation token gives you it's an digital asset that is a smart contract, and it's a contract between you and a winemaker that gives you the right to buy a certain number of bottles from that winemaker. Let's say every year. Usually it gives you the right to buy a certain number of bottles from that winemaker every year. So that's an allocation token. Now, once you buy those bottles, what we'll do, certainly for any bottles that are sold on our platform, is we'll attach a digital cork NFT to each one of those bottles. And your digital cork is the digital twin that provides your deed of ownership, chain of custody, certificate of authenticity. You know, that's the NFT that goes with the bottle that helps you prove the provenance. Then once you open the bottle, that's when you can mint your tasting tokens. And tasting tokens are your proof of experience, and kind of like that's your membership card into the community around that particular wine, and is it's your the digital version or the Web3 version of taking a picture of the bottle and posting it to Instagram. That's your tasting token. And then obviously the last and kind of the most important, what we're talking about right now, is the membership token for Club dVIN. And the membership token for Club dVIN is what makes you a member. And again, we have a limited number of membership tokens. We'll only ever have 5,000 Genesis members. And that membership token gives you the right, or gives you the ability to be an early adopter. All of our members will be the first to get allocation tokens, and the first to get digital corks, and the first to get tasting tokens. They'll be the first to be able to experience the rewards and incentives that come with those NFTs. Plus, they get access to our amazing network of experts and wine professionals. Plus, they'll get these amazing wine offers, and they get invited to all these fantastic events that we're having, including one coming up in New York. Anyone who's going to be in New York for ETH New York, Brian, why don't you talk a little bit about the amazing event that you're having in a couple of weeks?
We're, NFT New York and ETH New York are happening in the same week. One is Monday to Wednesday, the other is Wednesday to Friday. So we figured, hey, as they overlap, why don't we have an event? We're going to be holding an event, a wine tasting. Jana is going to be telling me which wines we're going to be tasting at the event, but we're also going to have it catered and, having light, past hors d'oeuvres. But you're going to have an opportunity to collect tasting tokens, so you can see what we're talking about, with the NFTs at the event. And we'll walk you through the process. It should be really easy, given our technology is up and running at full strength right now to purchase memberships if you'd like. It'll be an interesting room full of a lot of crypto people, given the what's going on in New York that week. Some potential investors, several of our existing investors will be there as well, and a lot of wine people who are just passionate and want to attend the event because they already are members of Club dVIN. And I'm really looking forward to it. We'll have about 70, 75 people there. It's going to be from 6:30 to 9:30 in Midtown East, a place called the Bloomberg Building. And it should be a fun, exclusive, but very easy to hang out event. So hopefully I'll get to see a bunch of you guys there.
Go to our website, go to clubdvin.com, and you can go to events and you can RSVP. There's someone. Hey, Brian, is that you?
Brian, you're so popular.
Sorry, I have to pick it up. It's my daughter.
Go ahead, Brian. We've got a couple of questions that I wanted to answer. One of them early, Ken asked about which blockchain we're on. And it's a really good question. It's something that I should have mentioned as I kind of went through the different NFTs, because the truth is different NFTs, because they have different purposes, we actually mint them on different chains. So the membership NFT for Club dVIN is on the Ethereum mainnet. And the reason that it's there is for liquidity. We just want to make sure that our members always have the ability to buy and sell those memberships if they ever want to. We hope that no one ever sells them, but we want them to have the ability to do that if they need to. For the allocation tokens, it's really going to depend on the winemaker. Some of the allocation tokens we'll probably do on Polygon. Some of them we may do on Ethereum mainnet. It's really going to depend on how many tasting tokens and how much turnover we're expecting. For the digital corks and the tasting tokens, both of those we're minting on Polygon. And we're doing that because for a couple of different reasons. One, because it's very low cost. So there's almost, I think it's less than a penny now to mint or to trade an NFT on Polygon. So it's very inexpensive. It's also very eco-friendly. In fact, I think Polygon, if they didn't already, then by next month they're going to be carbon neutral, which is very important to us. And with tasting tokens and digital corks, our expectation is that this year we'll probably have about 100,000 digital cork and tasting token NFTs out there in the world, and within 5 years it'll be about 1 million a year. So we want to make sure that those NFTs are minted and traded, or minted and stored on a blockchain that is that's very that's eco-friendly and carbon neutral. So that's the story of which networks we're on. There was another question earlier, about how we work with winemakers. Sure, Stuart. So we can probably get into that a little bit more individually. If you want to kind of DM me, we can probably have a call. But I'll tell you the standard, how it works fairly standardly with an allocation token is we'll do it for all of the winemakers that we're talking to right now. We do it for a couple percent, 2.5% typically of the initial sale, and then 2.5% of aftermarket sales as well. So it's the idea is that we'll create the contract, we'll create the tokens, we'll help market them, and then we'll provide the winemakers with a dashboard so that they can see how those allocation tokens are traded and how they're working, and so that they have a way to communicate with and build community around their allocation token holders. It's part of the same package that we offer winemakers for digital corks and tasting tokens as well. So we kind of do all of the Web3 part of it, and it's in exchange for a small percentage. It's kind of like almost like a transaction fee.
All right, we've got another question from Rob. What percentage of allocation tokens initially will be for speculative wine projects versus currently collectible wines?
It's hard to say. I think we're looking at both, and we're having conversations about both. I think we're going to try to have a pretty good balance for a lot of the old world wines that are, or for a lot of the old world projects that we're talking to, or old world winemakers. A lot of those allocation tokens will be, small allocations of existing, currently collectible wines. For the new world, most of the new world winemakers that we talk to, they don't necessarily want to, reach out to their existing allocation holders and say, now you've got to pay for the allocation. So they'll be mostly doing it with new projects. So I think we'll have some balance. But I would say mostly in the old world, it will be existing currently collectible projects, and mostly in the new world, it'll be I mean, I don't consider them speculative. All the winemakers that we're working with are fantastic winemakers that have a ton of experience and great reputations making wonderful wines. But it'll, for the most part, I think in the new world, not for the most part in the new world, the allocation tokens will be for wines that are new entries to the marketplace.
Okay, and any thoughts about high-end spirit producers?
For sure. That's a conversation. The amount of incoming that we get from spirits producers is almost as much as what we get from wine producers. It's really a lot, and we're still thinking that through. It's definitely going to be part of our platform, and it's something that we want to do. But we so far haven't. We're really focused on wine right now. We think spirits is probably on the radar for maybe next year. This year we're 100% focused on winemakers.
Calls at least one a day from somebody saying, "Hey, are you thinking about it?" And there's just a tremendous opportunity. I think we're way out in front of the pack right now. So it's an interesting thought.
All right. So I would say if anyone has any final questions, throw them into the chat and we would be happy to address them. Otherwise, Dave or Brian, any other final points that you don't think we touched on?
I'll go first and let Dave finish up. One of the first things I said was that every day in crypto world, NFTs is an adventure. I think you've seen from what we've done over the past 50 minutes or so, is that there have been, if you could see the development of Club dVIN over the past year, as the technology changes, as utility changes, we're just finding new ways, to serve our community, and there are more yet to come. That there's one thing for sure, is that 6 months from now there'll be a lot more utility and opportunity within Club dVIN. So excited to have you guys, be a part of our adventure.
Well said. All right, Dave.
There's really nothing else for me. I mean, we're really excited to see people. I see a bunch of existing members. I see a bunch of people that we talked to. So anybody, if there's anybody out there that wants to know more or who'd like to, schedule a one-on-one with the team, we're happy to do that. Please feel free to reach out to me. Probably everybody here, can get in touch with me one way or another, or just send a message on the, in one of our social medias. Please reach out and DM. We're happy to talk to anybody about the project. We're really just very excited, and there's lots of really good stuff coming. And even with the relatively terrible news today, we've got it's been a little bit of a bloodbath the last week or so, but it hasn't really changed. Certainly no one in our organization or anyone that we talk to, it doesn't change any of our thoughts about the market. The truth is, we're not in the speculation business, we're in the utility business. So it's I can see how some people are it's giving some people some heartburn, the movement in the market. But just if any of you were around for like 1999 and 2000, it was the same heartburn that we were having back then. But the good thing was the internet didn't go away. It wasn't a fad. As it turns out, there's always a use for fantastic technology, even after the wind goes out of the balloon a little bit. So I think that's probably what's happening here, and we're all really excited about the next phase.
Hey, with the drop in the crypto world, with the drop in ETH, we're cheap right now. Go and buy your memberships.
a little bit too cheap. Actually, maybe wait a week. It's a little-
It's funny. As you said that, I took a look at the market, David, down 1,000, at least the Dow Jones. I'm scared to look at the S&P and crypto. Oh,
yeah, it's a rough day. It's a
yeah,
rough day.
we've been there, but we've been there before.
It is what it is. All right.
All right, cool. One more thing, guys. If any of you are going to be at any of the big crypto conferences or wine conferences, we are likely going to be there. So let us know. You can check out our website to see the upcoming events that we're planning. We're going to be, as we said, in New York next week. We're going to be in Bordeaux next week doing an event the next day, Barcelona the next week. So we are global. Come and find us. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in. The full recording of this will be up on our website in a couple of days. So stay tuned for that. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Shanna.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Talk soon. Bye-bye.